Topic: The Old Man and the Pigeons. It was a new neighborhood, one that gave off the pinched look of something that has grown tremendously in a short span of time. Row after row of apartment buildings reared their cemented heads, their walls leaking the wind, their balconies almost touching, leaving only a narrow opening for the Karachi sky. It was the kind of place where everyone was always in everyone else's business, since there just wasn't room for privacy. We had moved here temporarily while our house underwent massive renovation. I wasn't too happy with the arrangement, but my mom told me we had to make do. A soft grey clump of feathers clattering onto my desk one steamy hot day in June started it all. My last exam was in 2 days, and I was doing my best to not doze off while poring over squiggly integration signs when I heard a whoosh, a scrabbling of claws, and a thump. I looked up. There was a pigeon sitting on my desk. How it made its way through my bedroom window's grill, I'll never guess. Pigeons are funny that way. I was mulling over this in my head when I heard the commotion. From my window, I could see an old man in the balcony directly opposite ours, creating a huge fuss. Actually, old was an understatement. Ancient was the word I was looking for. 1,000 wrinkles lined his face, and his skin stretched taut across his knobby hands. It was a miracle he had been able to retain the flecks of grey and black in his otherwise snow-white hair. He was yelling something unintelligible. Clutching the sides of his balcony, I watched alarmed as he bent further and further over the edge. He seemed to be leaning far enough over to get a glimpse under it. Just when it looked like he was going to tip over altogether, and I opened my mouth to cry out, the door to his balcony banged open. A man came rushing out and pulled him back up in the nick of time. Father, he shouted, are you trying to kill yourself? What in God's name were you trying to do? I can't find him. I can't find him. Where has he gotten to? I know I wasn't able to feed him his apple pieces today, but that was only because we are out of apples. Oh, he's punishing me. Where is he? Here, hold me back. I look over the edge. He's down there. I know it. He's the youngest. He doesn't know any better. Stop it, father. Just stop it. I understand that you are obsessed with your stupid pigeons, but the rest of us have more important things to worry about. Why can't you act normal for once in your life? With that, his son stormed back inside just as angrily as he had come, and the old man burst into tears, his entire body trembling with heaving sobs. Not bothering to stem the tears flowing down his withered face, he slowly made his way to a chair in the corner of the balcony. That's when I noticed the cage beside it, a cage bursting with pigeons of all shapes and sizes and colors. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh myself. One thing was for certain. I had to return the one I had found. After witnessing what I just had, I went back to my room, wondering how on earth I was supposed to capture a live pigeon with my bare hands, but it proved to be simpler than I had imagined. It simply hopped into my hands when I held out a piece of fruit. Getting the old man's attention turned out to be harder. Excuse me, uncle, I called from my balcony. No response. It took a lot of yelling and flapping my arm about to finally get him to look up. But when he saw what I was cradling in other arm, he gave a yelp of delight and started towards me. Where did you find him? He gasped. It was more of a case of him finding me actually. How should I get him to you? He's the youngest, you see. He's never even made a test flight. But now that he's seen me, he'll know his way home from here. Let him go. Let's see if he makes it. Mm, are you sure about this? The last thing I wanted was for this crazy old man to throw another tantrum because his pigeon had escaped to the heavens, and I suddenly didn't want to be the one who helped him do that. Yes, 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 don't underestimate Mubarak, he smiled, clapping his hands together. Mubarak? Okay, if you say so. I launched the pigeon into the air. For a second he faltered, but then he opened his wings wide and flew straight towards the old man. He perched on top of the cage, cooing and allowing himself to be stroked. Very good, Mubarak. Good boy. I'm so proud of you. I'll feed you an entire apple tomorrow. I laughed outright, and that was that. But from that day on, I couldn't help looking over at the balcony with the pigeon cage whenever I had a spare moment. And I began to notice that this old man was as consistent as the sunrise when it came to caring for his pet birds. Like clockwork, every afternoon around tea time, when the sun's rays set the sides of the apartment buildings aglow, he would emerge onto his balcony, a notebook clutched in one hand, a bag of seeds in the other, and make straight for his pigeons. He would spend the rest of the evening talking to them, sketching them, cleaning out their nest, feeding them, and letting them sweep up and around our building. What amazed me the most was how they always came back to him. After a week of watching this, I couldn't contain my curiosity any longer. My dad happened to know the old man's son from the mosque, so I worked up my courage and decided to pay them a visit the same afternoon. The woman who opened the door, presumably his daughter in law, seemed taken aback when I told her who I had come to see. He doesn't talk about anything but those birds. You won't be able to get a word in edgewise. That's all right. I'll be fine, I told her as he led me out to the balcony. The old man's face lit up like a beacon when he saw who it was. Ah, so if it isn't Mubarak's savior. Come in, come in. I knew you couldn't stay away from him too long. Mubarak's a charmer, all right. That was the beginning of a wonderful summer. I spent most of my evenings with the old man and his remarkable pigeons. I learned that his name was Karim, and I learned a great deal more about his birds. I discovered that Karim uncle had names for each of his pigeons. There were 7 in total, and if I had any reservations about all of them being stuffed in one suffocating cage, they disappeared entirely when I got a good look at the enclosure. Half of it was open to the sky, so the birds could come and go as they pleased. Gradually, they learned to trust me. Karim uncle would pour seeds into my hand, and I would let them peck it clean. His notebook was filled with endless sketches of his pigeons in various positions, preening, flying, resting. The next day, something terrible happened. There was a bomb blast near Clifton, and a school van full of kids from my own school was caught in the explosion. I couldn't believe it. The insensitive news reports coming in said that about half of them had died on the spot, and the rest were in critical condition. No matter how much my mom and dad tried to comfort me, I couldn't stop crying. I made my way over to Karim uncle's balcony with a heavy heart, hoping to be comforted. But as the afternoon wore on, and he noticed nothing different about my gloomy countenance. Instead, droning on and on about how he was planning on trying a new mix of seeds that he had heard would help with the birds' digestion, I grew snappy. There was a bomb blast today. Did you hear? Beta, hand me that towel over there. I need to dry out Roma's feathers before she catches a bug. She is not feeling too sprightly today. I patiently handed it to him. People from my school died. I didn't really like Shafa. She was always so mean to me. But I can't stop thinking about her. She was her parents' only child. How will they deal with it? And what did she even do wrong? She was just a kid. Did you know Mubarak flew all the way to the mall across the street and back today? Little fellow learns more every day. What is wrong with you? Don't you care? There's more to life than these stupid birds, Kareem uncle. I burst out crying. He looked at me surprised, about to say something, but I was in no mood to hear it. I fled home, thinking about how stupid I had been to think a loony old pigeon guy could have all the answers to this troubled world. Things just got worse from there. They say it doesn't rain, but it often pours, and Karachi was caught in a thunderstorm. There was a series of shout-outs in our neighborhood and elsewhere to settle communal differences. My family was afraid to go out at night, and my mom begged my dad to pray Isha at home instead of going to the mosque. I didn't want to live in fear, and I didn't know what else to do except blame the land I had been born in, the city I called home. I no longer went over to Karim uncle's house. I couldn't bear to hear him discuss his pigeons with me, knowing he was oblivious to what was happening around him. The next day, we got an unexpected visitor. It was Karim uncle's son, and he looked worried. Father hasn't been doing well. He refuses to eat anything, and he won't even go out to his pigeons. He's been asking for you. Please come over. We need you. I didn't need to be told twice. I was there in a flash. When I saw Karim uncle lying on his bed so frail and thin, I nearly started crying. Arfa, he croaked. Please, uncle, you have got to eat something or you will fall sick. I will, I will. But first I have to tell you the story behind my pigeons. Again with the pigeons, I clenched my teeth. No, hear me out, please, he said, as though he had read my mind. You know, my pigeons aren't just any old birds. They go back 4 or 5 generations. My father and I saved them from our burning village during the partition. It was all we managed to save. We had gone to fetch food supplies from the market, afraid of the violence the coming days were bound to bring. We didn't know they were planning on setting our village ablaze. My mother and my sisters died that night because we couldn't get to them in time. The pigeons were all that remained of my life before the partition. My father, struck with grief, died soon after. Those were dark days. I was alone. I had no one to turn to, but the pigeons gave me hope. I found a job, made a place for myself. I married young. She was a beautiful woman, my wife, and she understood how important the pigeons were to me. As long as they lived on and continued to breed, my family would live on too. I know I don't seem to care about anything else but them, and I'm sorry for it. But those birds are the only thing that keeps me going. It doesn't matter how bad things get in this country. At least I know they are still under my care, even if nothing else is. And that's enough for me. His tears fell silently, and I couldn't hold back mine either. I hadn't ever thought much about life in Pakistan, but the pieces were gradually beginning to fall into place. It was as if a mist that had enveloped my mind was beginning to lift. As long as you had something going for you in this city, even if it was nothing more than afternoon tea, being able to see the sunrise and set each day, and trusting pigeons feeding out of your hand, there would be a tomorrow, and there would be hope.